I was warned not to buy Blackwood Manor. The villagers called it cursed, a house with a past that no one wanted to discuss. But I didn't believe in curses, not until that first night. I had always dreamed of owning a house in the countryside, somewhere away from the noise and clutter of city life. When I found Blackwood Manor, nestled at the end of a narrow lane in a tiny English village, it seemed perfect. The estate agent's voice had a strange edge when she told me it had been on the market for years, but I didn't ask too many questions. After all, it was exactly what I wanted: old, beautiful, and surprisingly affordable. It was my third night at the manor when I first noticed something strange. I was in the kitchen, washing the last of my dinner plates, when I heard it, a knock at the back door. A quick, deliberate knock that sounded almost urgent. I turned, water dripping from my hands, staring at the door. It led out to the garden, and I hadn't even touched it since moving in. The knock came again, 3 hard raps this time. I walked slowly to the door, feeling a tightness in my chest. When I pulled back the curtain, there was nothing there, just a dark garden, thick with fog rolling in from the hills. I tried to shrug it off. It was a windy night, after all. But as I locked the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, just beyond the reach of the garden light. That night, as I lay in bed, I started hearing noises from the floor above me. Footsteps, faint at first, but growing louder, as if someone was pacing back and forth. My heart pounded in my ears as I stared at the ceiling, following the sound. It made no sense. The upstairs was empty. I had barely unpacked up there, let alone used any of the rooms. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, the quirks of an old house settling. But the footsteps continued, rhythmic and purposeful, moving from one room to the next. I finally sat up, holding my breath, half expecting the door to my room to open. It didn't, but the sound only stopped once the first hints of dawn began to glow through the curtains. The next day I went into the village. I needed to know if these oddities were normal for Blackwood Manor, or if I was just overreacting to living alone for the first time. I ended up mentioning the noises to the old woman who ran the village shop. The moment I did, her face seemed to pale. "Blackwood Manor, you say?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "You'd do well to leave that place, love. Old Mr. Blackwood, well, he went missing in that house, you know. No one ever did find out where he went." I laughed nervously, brushing it off, but the look in her eyes, the mixture of fear and pity, made my stomach twist. I tried to put it out of my mind, but that night the footsteps returned. This time they were louder, more insistent. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs as I lay perfectly still, listening. The pacing stopped right above me, and then I heard something even worse, a whisper. It was faint, like someone was trying to speak just out of earshot. I strained to listen, and though I couldn't understand the words, the cold dread that filled me was unmistakable. The next morning I decided to confront whatever it was, if only for my own sanity. I went upstairs, stepping carefully down the long, narrow hallway to the smallest room at the end. I had avoided this room so far. It just felt wrong, as if the air was heavier here. But now I pushed the door open, determined to find some rational explanation. The room was empty, except for an old, dusty portrait hanging on the wall. It was of a man, stern-faced and wearing old-fashioned clothes. I stared at it, a chill running through me, because I knew that face. It was the same face I'd seen in my dreams, a man looking at me, searching for something. The air turned icy as I approached the painting, and just as I was close enough to touch it, I heard it again. "Find it." The whisper was unmistakable. My heart raced, and before I could react, the painting fell off the wall with a crash, revealing an old hidden compartment behind it. My hands trembled as I reached inside, pulling out a leather-bound journal and a rusted key. The room seemed to grow even colder, and suddenly I felt a presence behind me, a cold breath on the back of my neck. I spun around, but there was no one there, just the empty doorway, the dark hall beyond. The footsteps started again, this time coming toward me, and I knew I wasn't alone in that room. The whisper came again, clearer this time. "Find it before he does."